Hey everyone, I'm here about to make the drawings that we're going to paint. So our hope was that we started for project 4 and 5 by filling out our worksheet, coming up with our brand identity plans. Then we made a bunch of little compositional studies, some that were static and some that were dynamic. Did some research, looked at other designs, revised them, and came up with a couple more. I have 2 static and 2 dynamic. And I think I'm going to go with this static and this dynamic or something like it. My next step after that was that I was supposed to do a bunch of little test painting surfaces. And from these, some of them I liked. Some of them I didn't. I like that one. So we were just supposed to try and see how the paint worked in different ways. If it was washy, if it was cross-hatched, if I used Sharpie, if I had used little marks, big marks, squishy marks, flat marks. So I was supposed to try a lot of different things until I started to kind of get the hang of the paint and to really understand how to build a value scale on our palette. So a handful of those. Here's hopefully what our palette had looked like when we were done. So it had a 0, 50, 100, 70, 30, and then some mixture in between. So from here, I also have started to gather some visual reference material to work from. This is a flower bouquet that my friend made, so I have permission to use the imagery. So what I'm going to do is start by trying to recreate my static design. I have my mixed media board. Again, I think your brand is different than mine. But anything that will withstand the wet media is what we're after. And I have a collection of kitchen items that I'm going to try to use for building out my design. I'm just going to start with graphite. I'm going to check that I'm more or less 2.5. Where I want to be. I know I'm going to paint this so it doesn't have to necessarily be perfect. And I don't have another tracer, so I'm going to freehand it. And I'll plan when I paint it to make it really crisp. I'm making a pretty simple design so that I can allow the paint to do the parts that are fun. And like we've done in class, I'm going to put vine charcoal or heavy graphite on the back of this and then do a trace and transfer. I'll kind of hold it up to the light because I don't need to put charcoal where there's no information. Make sure I have a good coating. Shake that off in the trash. Gonna try to line it up. I'm gonna put it right there. And then I'm trying not to put too much pressure with this hand so that I don't make it all sloppy and messy. And then before I get too far, I'm gonna make sure it's releasing. I'm not doing all the content, I'm just doing enough to give myself a loose guide. And I can reference this photo later. But you might, if you're, say, doing a face with proportions or something, you might want to take a little more time in your trace and transfer. But I don't mind if mine's a little abstract. See what I've got before I let it go. I'm going to move this tulip up, kind of out of the frame. And maybe do a couple petals or leaves that are kind of flyaways. And in my sketch, I had a little ribbon . Maybe I'll put it in, maybe I won't, we'll see, I'll decide on that. And then I had this outer soft curve, so I found this plate that I thought I could at least get my curves with. And I'll kind of line them up with a ruler in a second. I don't really love it, so I'm going to move it up. make it a little smaller so it mimics the square more. And I know this is going to get painted, so I'm not so worried about that, but I'll erase it just so I can keep myself kind of organized. I'm going to lower this one too. Yeah, so it's a little bit more like a square. And again, I'll just use these kind of as guidance when I start to paint, but I'll know that the paint will allow me to make some adjustments. Add a couple more petals. I'm still pretty static because I'm centered, I'm radial, so I'm not necessarily just reinforcing the horizontal vertical grid, but also using that radial symmetry to make it kind of flatten. I'm using a little bit of depth here to make it have some kind of movement and interest, and then make some notes about where the paint will go in front and in back. Okay, so I think that one is ready to go. Now I'll go ahead and make my dynamic, which I won't paint until later when I have my color palettes worked out, which we'll cover color theory next week and kind of get into that. But I'm going to start my design just to see. I think I might use that same rounded rectangle. Oop, I'm going to move it in. To start. And then I'm using this as my template. I might redo this one. Already I'm thinking I don't love how it's unfolding. So I may use this as a test surface. And do another one later. Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll see. And then I can put back in my flowers in a different spot, which at this point I think I'm going to switch flowers. So I'll come back and revisit this one in a little bit. So if you're prepared to lay out your dynamic design, you can. But we definitely want to have our static design ready to go so that we can use some of these methods that we investigated in these little test paintings to go ahead and start to lay out the painting. So the next video I'll have will be me making a palette and then laying out the paint. Okay, we'll see you then.